Hello and thank you for joining us today at Distracted by Life. Our podcast is all about making change within yourself and your relationships. We share conversations, stories, and explore ideas coming from our lifelong journey of the high points and especially the low points where we learn to face our fears or cope with pain, loss, and failure. We do this in a discovery quest to establish patterns around our past and understanding whether we are tripping up from our past or being held hostage by it. We work on identifying ways to move forward, aligning our core values, and unlocking the keys to self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-compassion, and letting go of what is not serving you positively in life. A better you is always there, ready to explore in a new world. So let's begin. Today we'll be exploring a universal topic that impacts many of us and has been supported with quite a bit of research and discussed often in blogs and other podcasts. Fear of failure, that's our topic. And we'll talk about some causes of our fear of failure and how it holds us back, and more importantly, how to overcome it if at all possible. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome, Amal.
Hi, Dan. Glad to be here as always.
I'm curious about what you've discovered in your personal and coaching journey with your clients. What was a reoccurring theme or maybe the main reasons why fear of failure actually exists?
There are apparently 4 kind of recurring themes that keep coming up with even just not just with clients that I work with, but also people that I actually work with in the workplace. And when you hear stories from just general discussion you're having with friends or family members. So I'm going to categorize them in and break them down into this. So the first one is patterns from childhood. This is very familiar to a lot of people, including myself. Hypercritical adults cause children to internalize damaging mindset. They establish ultimatums and fear-based rules. This causes children to feel the constant need to ask for permission, reassurance, and then this ends up being carried out, this need for validation into adulthood. I can relate very much to this. The second one is perfectionism. Perfectionism is quite often, it does come up quite a lot. I see it almost daily with people I work with. Perfectionism is often at the root of a fear of failure. And for perfectionists, failure is so terrible and humiliating that they don't want to try anything. So stepping out of their comfort zone becomes terrifying. So perfectionism the root cause is the fear of failing. So you don't have the appetite or the capacity to stand if you fail on something. So why try something new? You're better off protect yourself and kind of just don't try anything at all. Over-personalization, which is basically the ego may lead us to over-identify with failure. It's hard to look beyond the failure at things like quality of the effort, extenuating circumstances, or growth opportunities. So you identify so much with the failure that you actually don't see the important steps you've taken, which is exactly that, the effort, some of the quality of work you put out, the growth opportunity, the new things you discover. The last one, which is the fourth one, is false self-confidence. People with true confidence know that they won't always succeed. A person with a fragile self-confidence avoids risks. They would rather play it safe than try something new. I also see that in the workplace, quite evident. People are set in their ways. You always they say things like, it's always been done this way and stuff like that. So those are the people who don't want to try anything new because the new thing is going to shake their self-confidence. So that's where it looks like a false of self-confidence. Yeah. So that's how I break it down.
Oh, interesting. So how does this fear of failure hold somebody back then?
Picture this: unhealthy organization culture. Too many organizations today have cultures of perfectionism. A set of organizational belief that any failure is basically unacceptable. Only pure unattained success will do. We're high performing. We are agile, we are fast, we're adapting, all of those kind of, terms that are being used. Imagine the stress and the terror in an organization like that. So the constant cover up for the smallest blemishes, the wild finger pointing as everyone tried to shift the blame for inevitable messes onto someone else. So this the second part. This one is shifting the blame and finger pointing. The truth is, I've been in culture like that, and it's really, really hard to stay within a culture like that, because the smallest mistakes, it's being put on, you're finding the next person who you can blame on this mistake because you don't want to take it on. So there is a big problem with accountability, a big problem with the messaging about trial and error is acceptable. And so people start stabbing each other in the back because they're pointing fingers at each other. The lying, the cheating, the falsification of data, hiding problems until they become crises that defy being hidden any longer. So those are the type of things that come up in an unhealthy organization culture that doesn't believe in failure, or at least doesn't accept failure, that it be as a kind of a baseline to the next point of growth for them and opportunities. Because the people who not afraid to fail look at failure, hey, this is a journey. I wanted to try this. It didn't work out the way I expected. But guess what I found out new taking this path. And then that very new that you found through that step that you failed become your new creative ways of doing things and your innovation. Creativity and innovation cannot exist if you're not allowed for failure and trial and error. They just can't exist. They actually come. They're the birthplace of innovation and creativity. There is also another aspect where you miss out on valuable opportunities. So if some people fail to reach a complete answer because of the lure of some early success in their career, so many fail because of their ego-driven commitment to what worked in the past. I mentioned that earlier. So a lot of people are, guided by their ego and kind of they lean and they see their life bigger than anything based on past and early successes. You often see this actually with senior leaders and management, especially those who made their names by introducing some critical change years ago. So they shy away from further innovation, afraid that this time they might fail, diminishing their luster basically. And they try to keep around their name from the past triumphs, past successes, early successes, things they have done when they came into the role, and it kind of created a big shift into the organization, and based on that they became the most popular, more successful leaders. So why want to try something new? Because it could diminish the early successes that they had. Besides, basically the success of something new might even prove that those achievements they have made in the past weren't so great after all. So why would you kind of want to try something new? Because you're still living in that, the high and glory time. So why take the risk? You want to hang on to your reputation by doing nothing really. And so such individuals are deeply invested in their egos and glorious of their past. So that they prefer to set aside some opportunities for future glory than risk even the possibility of failure. I see that a lot with the senior leaders. Anything that shake up that kind of early successes, because newness is I don't know what this is all about. So why, this is going to risk, my brand. Try something out of the box like this, like failure. I can't have this right now. Not in, where state of my life and my career to try something new that's going to make me look like, a fool basically, or too much of a risk taker. Also, you have high achievers become losers. Why do I say that? Because every talent contains an opposite that sometimes turn into a problem. Successful people like to win and achieve high standards. This makes them so terrified of failure that it ruins their life. When a positive trait like achievement become too strong in someone's life, it's on the way to becoming a major obstacle. I've seen this. I know this seems out of the box, but it's true. When your positive trait become so strong, it becomes an obstacle. Actually, it's all about balance. So especially when we do coaching through character strength, you go through the character strength and trait of an individual. You find the middle strength, the top strength, and the lower strength, and you try to balance and see where they can actually come together nicely. So you have to be cognizant of that. Achievement is a powerful value for many successful people. So they have built their life on it. They achieve at everything they do, like school, education, work, sports, art, whatever, any hobby. Each fresh achievement adds to the power of the value in their life. So if you are someone, especially high achievers, they put their value, their worth on what they achieve, and it becomes everything in their life. When it becomes everything and all-encompassing, you will not at all costs allow for any failure. So it becomes actually your downfall. So gradually failure becomes unthinkable. And maybe they have never failed yet. Also, I've met the people who have never failed yet in anything that they have done so far. So they have no experience rising above it. Failure becomes the supreme kind of nightmare and a frightful horror kind of thing that they must avoid at all costs. The simplest way to do this is never to try anything or take any risk. Stick rigidly to what you know you could do, what you know you could do best at. Protect yourself, work long hours, double and triple check your work on everything else, and the most conscientious conservative person in the universe that you can be. If constant hard work, diligent, brutal working hours, and hard-pressed kind of subordinate won't ward off the possibility of failing, using every possible means to keep it away. That's pretty much what you do. So you end up running into the risk of, that's where people find falsifying numbers, hiding the negative, stuff, conceal error, avoid customer feedback, constantly shift blame into others, and basically shifting the blame for errors into anyone too weak to fight back. And that happens a lot in the workplace. The other one that I talk about, which I want to mention here, which I also covered a little earlier, is loss of creativity. Overachievers destroy their own peace of mind and the lives of those they work with them. People too attached to goodness and mortality become self-righteous bigots. So everyone likes to succeed. The problem comes when the fear of failure is dominant. When you can no longer accept the inevitable of making mistakes, nor recognize actually the importance of trial and error in finding the most creative solution. And that's pretty much what I mentioned earlier. The more creative you are, the more actually error you're gonna make. And deciding to avoid those errors will destroy the creativity too in the process. So balance does count when you think about it. Some, the saying, some tartness must season the sweetest dish. A little bit of selfishness is valuable even in the most caring person too. And a little failure is essential to preserve everyone's perspective on success. We hear a lot about being positive. Maybe we also need to recognize that negative parts of our life and experiences have just as important role to play in finding success at work and in life.
Wow. That was a lot. And I didn't want to interrupt you because you were on quite the roll there. I have seen this from day one. Was very much a part of the fear of failure culture, where you're ostracized, looked over for promotions. I've seen a lot of people looked over for promotion because they had failed at one thing. As I got older with my teams, the number one thing I'd tell them right off the bat, any new person starting, is, are you going to fail? I'm going to ask them, are you going to fail? And they'll tell me, nope. And I said, no, it's the wrong answer. You are going to fail. But number one, it's important that you tell somebody
Mm-hmm.
And number 2, let's find the root cause so it doesn't happen again. It's not that difficult. So much of my working life when I first started was defending, having a shield up because somebody's going to throw darts at you.
Yeah.
To try to blame you for it. And generally, as the young one in the group, you're going to get blamed left, right, and center.
That's the unhealthy,
terrible culture.
Organizational culture, yes.
Oh, my God, that was terrible.
Fear-based.
Yeah. I just wanted to put that out there. And now I can ask, okay, so you said your piece. How do we overcome this fear of failure?
Okay, so there are a few steps that we will kind of cover up here, and I'm going to get into each one of them in a bit of a detail so I can give it context. So the first one is figure out where the fear comes from. You know how we talked about the 4 level of, different fear earlier, the type of where they come from. So basically ask yourself what the root cause of the negative belief it could be. When you look at
hang on. So I was actually right.
Yes.
When I would tell them, let's look at the root cause and move on.
Yes, you were
vindicated.
You were right. So
Continue, please. Thank you.
When you look at the 4 main causes of the fear that we explored earlier, which ones resonate with you? That's what you need to ask yourself. Is it patterns from childhood? Is it perfectionism? Is it over-personalization? Is it false self-confidence? You really kind of have to be honest with yourself. So it takes a process to figure where the fear comes from and then name the source of the fear that takes away some of its power.
It requires some serious introspection.
Oh, yes. And you know what? A lot of people nowadays so distracted by life and getting on that they don't pay
Interesting
attention.
plug for the podcast, yes.
They don't pay attention to try to stop and say, a lot of our life we're reactive, we're automatic, we're on autopilot. So a lot of our trials and error and pain and losses and grief and whatnot, all of this is going to happen and will continue to happen. The only thing is required from us as a human being in order to reach that self-actualization is that those steps that we need to take is digging deep, pausing, do that self-inquiry, introspect, all of those that will help us to reach to what the root causes are, what the story behind the narrative, what is those self-negative belief and talk, the dialogue we have within ourselves that also quite damaging. So we have to get to that place. It's not easy to get to it, but once you get to it and you work with it, that's when it's transformational.
So we may not be able to change, just talking work, for instance, we may not be able to change that toxic environment, but we'll be able to change how we deal with it.
Yes. You will never be able to change a toxic environment or other people's behavior. It took me a very long time to actually get to that point. It's very simple and easy, and everyone in this planet know it by now. But when you are fighting and trying to change things, and in the moment you forget that you really can't change the circumstance or the situation or the person, the people involved in it, or the culture you're in it. But what you do have control is your behavior, your reaction, your own peace of mind. If you can work with that, then that makes all the difference. So the second one is on terms of how to overcome the fear of failure is exactly what I just described. Reframe beliefs about your goal. So having an all or nothing mentality will leave you with nothing sometimes. Have a clear vision for what you like to accomplish, but also include learning something new in your goal. It's one thing to create a goal and have a vision for it, but also include within that goal, what are you going to learn? Leave room, a space for learning. When you do that, you're not expecting perfectionism or the best outcome. You're actually saying, hey, I have a goal. Let's see how it goes. And I'm going to learn from whatever the outcome of that goal is going to be. Whether you succeed in it, accomplish it, or whether and let's say you didn't succeed in it, but in that process between the path you took from point A to B, in that middle, That middle, what have you learned? If you always aim for improvement and learning, you are much less likely to fail or feel that, oh my God, it's the end of the world if you fail. Because you took it as, this is an improvement, this is a learning opportunity, no problem. That's the mentality, that's the belief, that's the reframing of the goal. The third one is actually learn to think positive, the internal dialogue. In many cases, you believe what you tell yourself. Your internal dialogue affect how you react and behave. Our society is so obsessed with success, but it's important to recognize that even the most successful people encounter failure. Walt Disney was once fired from a newspaper because they thought he lacked creativity. Ironically, he went on and found an animation studio that failed. He never gave up, and now Disney is a household name in creativity. Steve Jobs was also fired from Apple before returning as the face of the company for many years. If Disney and Jobs had actually believed the negative feedback, they wouldn't have made it. They came back and they wanted to do it still. It's up to you to notice your negative self-talk and identify those triggers. Replace the negative thoughts with positive facts about yourself and the situation. You will be able to create actually new mental script that you can reach for when you feel negativity kind of creeping in. The voice inside your head has a great effect on what you do. Visualize all potential outcome. Uncertainty about what will happen next is actually quite scary for a lot of people and most of us. Take time to visualize the possible outcome of your decision. Think about the best and worst case scenario. You will feel better if you already have kind of had the chance to mentally prepare what would happen or what that look like. Fear of the unknown might actually keep you from taking a new job. Weigh the pros and cons, imagine potential success and failure in making such a life-altering decision. Knowing how things could turn out might help you unstuck from whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish.
Now, do you think maybe I'm on a different tangent here, but a vision board might help for some of this?
Sure. A lot of
visualizing?
A lot of people, there are people who like vision boards because it inspired them. And when they create it and they look at it every day in the morning, it gives them that sense of inspiration and purpose and a goal. Like you look at it every day, it stays top of mind, it stays fresh. I'm going to still keep plugging away towards what I need to do. But then also some people like just mental visualization. So every day, they visualize their goal and they see themselves. Let's say, for example, you want to speak at a big stage. Every day you're visualizing yourself speaking. You're creating audiences, the number and audiences in your, mentally and visualizing that. You keep visualizing this vision every day, every day, every day. You're feeding your mind that setup, right? That set. And you know what? With meditation and mindfulness also and positive psychology, there is a lot that says about visualization, mental visualization that actually does work for people. But remember, at the end of the day, not every tool and strategy work for everyone. So you have to pick from all of those out there. You have to pick the one that actually does work for you, which means you have to try them all and see the one that resonate and feel right, and that's the one you keep at it and keep at it.
It's a little bit of a process, but it's worth it in the long run.
Yeah, because not every strategy, every positive psychology strategy or meditation don't work for a lot of people, but it works for some people. Mindfulness and living mindfully doesn't work. It doesn't come easily. It's training and practice you do every single day, and that you're literally creating that habit. You can rebirth a new habit if you don't keep trying to do it consistently, consistent effort every single day. You have to put the effort and training into it to become a positive, healthy habit in your life so you thrive. Everything requires some effort on your part. Without it, you're going to come back and say, oh, I tried this, didn't work out. Oh, no, mindfulness doesn't work for me. A lot of people say mindfulness doesn't work for you.
I've learned that there's different ways of mindfulness that help.
Yeah, and there is actually different ways of actually meditating if you're open to it as well, you know. So when we look at worst case scenarios, for example, there are times when the worst case could be absolutely devastating for someone, right? In many cases, if something bad happened, it won't be the end of the world. It's important to define how bad the worst case scenario is in the grand scheme of your life. Sometimes when we give situation more power than they deserve, in most cases, failure is not a permanent thing. That's what people need to understand. The more you give into fear, you give it so much power in your life. You have to play, the worst case scenario in your mind. And when you look at the grand scheme of things in your life, you're going to find that failure is not permanent. It's actually just a learning. It's a pathway to learning and growth. And at the end of the day, you look at your life from a holistic view, you realize it's no big deal. And it's not like you're the only one that failed at something. Oh God, many people and will continue to fail at something. That's just how it is. That's just life. Have a backup plan. It never hurts to have a backup plan. The last thing you want to do is scramble for solution when the worst has happened. That's why you play the worst case scenario. You see how it goes, and then you have a backup plan. So what you're doing is you're kind of softening and getting comfortable with that fear of failing onto something. You're telling yourself, if I tried this, because I really want to try this, if it doesn't work, am I going to beat myself up and hide and cower and get mad and start doubting myself and go through the down spiral that fear tend to do when you, not just fear, but also when you fail at something that tend to kind of just get you all stuck and all continue on to the down spiral? Or you're gonna
have a plan B.
Yeah, because you're trying to, just like when you're teaching someone, your children, not to fear to fail. You made a decision, you stick with it, whatever the outcome of that decision. It could be that there would be consequences. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not. But how are you teaching them to face life and show up for it if you're gonna keep raising risk-averse children in all areas? I have discovered recently that as much as I love my son so very much and I'm trying to protect him from the world, I can't really keep doing that.
You can't keep him in a bubble.
I can't keep him at a bubble. So as much as it pains me, I do have to let him taste the failure, because I've noticed, because if someone, like I said earlier, if you haven't failed at something yet, you have a big problem because you don't know how to rise above it. It destroys people. Learn from whatever happens. Things may not go the way you planned, but that doesn't automatically mean you have failed. Learn from whatever arises. And even a less than ideal situation can be a great opportunity to make changes and grow. That's really the end of it, really, to life overall, whether on a personal level, whether on a professional level. You learn from these different things, just like when people go through divorces, they learn from, what happened through that process, provided you are giving yourself the time and space to introspect. Awareness and metacognition and meta-awareness does not come if you actually don't give yourself the time to do that. You will continue to repeat the same mistakes, fear the same fear of failure, and actually go into the same fears of everything in life because you haven't had the time to kind of face what it is and name it and find the root causes.
So we've identified some of the causes of fear of failure, some of the stuff we could try to overcome fear of failure. And that leaves us with any final thoughts that you have, Mo.
Well, before I get into the final thoughts, I want to say this, that I should have added to my list. How about self-acceptance and self-compassion?
Oh, yeah.
Those are very hard to practice, but guess what? They are the antidote to bouncing back and rising above that failure.
overcoming negative self-talk and all that stuff. Yeah.
Accept the situation for what it is. Work with what came up, what arises, and then have some self-compassion to yourself. Because in reality, is we give self-compassion to our friends and family when someone come to you, a friend or even your children, do you say, oh, this is bad, you did bad? You don't do that. You actually have compassion. You have a conversation. You actually draw the goodness out of them and say, no, it's okay. It's gonna happen. But the most important thing, you try. Why can we have the same conversation dialect to ourselves?
Always.
Exactly. So we all have different circumstances and situations in our life that impact us in different ways. No one size fits all when it comes to fear of failure or allowing fear to hold you hostage. However, the first step towards recovering from being stuck in life is self-inquiry, which we talked about, investigating the findings and understanding our trigger and exploring options that will help create healthy mindset and new thriving ways of thinking. I hope you found our discussion today helpful. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, you make the journey worthwhile. May you live with ease. Back to you, Dan.
Well, thanks, Amal. And thank you all very much for joining us here at Distracted by Life. If you're interested to learn more, check out our other podcasts, of course, or hop online to Amal's website at amalcandido.com. This is where she talks about her coaching world, covering life, leadership, and mindfulness, including links to popular podcasts and to her books as well. And with that said, stay tuned for our next episode from Amal and myself. Thanks again, and talk to you soon.